Hey now, Dan Aberhard here, today's host of the Growing the Future podcast. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 1. You can sign up at our newsletter at growingthefuturepodcast.ca to get emails about our new episodes and find all of the past episodes there. Make sure to give us a follow on the social media platforms out there and on our YouTube channel. You can also find the Aberhard family of companies online, starting with aberhardfarms.com to learn more about our farming operation in Saskatchewan, suregrowth.ca to learn more about our precision agronomy consulting services offered there, and convergencegrowth.com, where they accelerate solutions across food, health, and agriculture. And last but not least, aberhardagsolutions.ca, where we deliver one-of-a-kind fertility solutions of the future to your farm. Our next guest is the co-founder of a company called IntelliCulture. Their mission is to provide farmers with affordable technology that drives ROI in their operations. We've heard that lots before, but we'll drill down on what that means for IntelliCulture. Their farm management software is designed to address three of the industry's largest challenges: labor availability, always an issue; pest prevention, always an issue; machine safety, that's a big one. What is interesting is that this guest has an extensive background ranging from working at Tesla and powertrain systems integration, firmware engineering, helping farmers in this new digital area we are entering, and also leadership coaching for students and early grads who are interested in starting businesses. I want to talk to the guest about that. You can find him on LinkedIn or at the IntelliCulture website at www.intelliculture.ca. Today we're going to talk to this guest about his journey from the automotive tech world into agriculture, what the company does for farmers and where things are going, and some of the wisdoms he can share about getting a startup off the ground, which is always fascinating. Welcome to the show, Cole Powers.
Thanks, Dan. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, man. So part of what I thought was really interesting about where you guys are coming from in terms of your background as a team in agriculture is the fact that you actually migrated from the automotive industry. And you worked with companies like GM and Tesla down in California. Completely different culture, completely different setup scenario. Start with sort of the origin stories of you and the company, the automotive industry, how you got into agriculture, and your big why for the company as a foundation for this conversation, please, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big meaty one to start us off there, Dan.
Love it.
Start with the entire origin story. Okay, excellent. So yeah, the co-founders and I, like you mentioned, we came from the automotive sector from a professional setting. We actually met when we were in college and had the opportunity to work together for a number of years in a varying number of companies. So like you had mentioned, we worked at companies like GM and Tesla together on internships, and we also worked on a design team at our college called the University of Waterloo Alternative Fuels team. And that was kind of like the startup sandbox for us that really led to us starting IntelliCulture. We got basically full creative control to take a Chevy Camaro and rip it apart and make it a hybrid electric vehicle, designed the entire powertrain and car from scratch. What that project did, though, was it really opened up our eyes to what was possible when you had full control of your own business, of your own project. And so that was kind of the spurring point for us. You know, aside from that, initially we loved working together as a team. We loved working on that car, but we loved agriculture even more. We felt that it was the most impactful industry. And I mean, it's you hear it a lot, but at the end of the day, growers and producers, they feed the world. And really that was the most impactful and motivating industry for us. So that's really what spurred us to shift out of automotive. We got that startup sandbox experience in the design team that I had mentioned to, and that really kickstarted us to start IntelliCulture.
What was it that you saw about the agriculture industry from the vantage point of being in the automotive industry that made you want to migrate your career?
It just seemed it was a little bit more personal, I think, was the biggest thing. The faces behind the ag industry, it felt like more of a community than a corporate industry like we felt in the automotive sector. So I think that was one of the big spurring points. Alongside, like I had mentioned, just the impact of the work that we were working on felt larger in ag. Not to discount or discredit the automotive sector. I love it. I spent many years there, but working on a car versus working on feeding the world was two very different paradigms for us.
What does Elon Musk like to eat for breakfast?
I have no idea.
You're never at like the Tesla cafeteria and you're like, hey man, what's going on? He's got like a yogurt and banana or something.
We were at the Tesla cafeteria quite often, but I was usually quick to grab my coffee and get back to work and get back to the desk. So I have no idea what Elon Musk was eating for breakfast those days.
Or get yelled at. What are you doing? We're going to Mars. What are you doing? How is it different? I mean, I see the advent of automation in both the automotive world, of course, and agriculture. And I'm like, what is taking so long? But what are the fundamental differences between the target market? Obviously, automation for vehicles is probably every human being on planet Earth eventually. Even if you're like riding a bike in India, maybe you'll be, flying in something automated eventually to your destination. But both industries are going for automation. I see, like, obviously it's a much bigger market for automotive to be automated, but like, what is the difference? Because we were talking about it before you came on the show. John Deere's just announced the automated vehicle. The fundamental underlying conversation trending on Twitter that I see from the agriculture community is, oh, I love the idea of not driving my tractor ever again, said no farmer ever. Farmers love to drive their tractors. That is basically their favorite thing about farming, I think, for most of them. But I don't know, do people love driving? I mean, I'd rather be doing a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
In a vehicle. What do you see as the differences, the barriers, the opportunities in those two different markets when it comes to automation?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. And starting with the second half there, the opportunities, like you said, I think automotive, that target market, it's a lot of folks just see driving and commuting as more of a chore. It's not something that they necessarily want to do unless you're going on a road trip or something. But if you can sit in the back of your car that chalets you out to your office and back, or out to the farm and back, and you can get work done or spend some time chatting with family, that seems like a net gain. But in ag, like you'd mentioned, I think everyone, myself included, loves carting around in the tractor and actually doing work in the iron. Like, there's nothing quite like that. So I think like that's the big delta in the opportunity that I see. And then alongside that, I think that there's challenges in both industries, and like coming from seeing that world in the automotive space, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of fast moving parts, for sure. And that's one of the huge challenges there. That said, in ag, I think that there's more like environmental variables that you need to be concerned with. There's a lot more going on and changing in a field than there might be on a highway in California, for example. So that poses a whole new set of challenges when it comes to developing and rolling out that automation in the industry.
Right. Yeah, they don't have weather to contend with on the same scale, I think, that farmers do in some way. And but it is interesting. There's a lot of variables on the road, and there's a lot of variables in the field, and a lot of people believe it's not possible, but I believe it's absolutely inevitable.
Absolutely.
But what would be the top thing that you learned in the automotive industry that you would really like to translate to agriculture, or maybe there's a little bit of a deficit or an opportunity to close a gap on?
Yeah, I think that like the biggest one was simplicity and affordability. That was one of our big motivating factors coming in when we first got into IntelliCulture as well, was that we saw how much technology there was in those vehicles, and how affordable. Like, you can buy a self-driving Tesla for what, like $35,000, I think is the list price on some of their new ones. Right. And you look at that, like it's absurd that is so affordable to some consumers, and they have such a high level of sophistication in the technology. So bringing that back into ag is something that we were really, really passionate about. We were fortunate to see how they were able to have those cost savings in the automotive sector, and that's what we're hoping to bring in with IntelliCulture, is that lens of simplicity in the tech that you're implementing. That's really just targeting a few specific items, as opposed to driving up cost of it.
Interesting. Well, that's a good segue into what you guys do for producers. So when we talked, I was looking at your website, and I love this stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it's such a crowded space.
Absolutely.
Is it a solution looking for a problem? Where do you begin? Where do things fit in? But your response was, your fundamental value proposition was that you can help in specific areas at a different cost point. You can bring technology down. You're wondering, why is this so expensive? Can you iterate for the listener a little bit more about why you think you guys can make a difference in a very crowded space?
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more that it is a crowded space. And the last thing that we would want to see is become another tech company that goes into ag thinking that they can change the world, but they're not solving any problems. I think that the way that we're really trying to hone in on that, though, is carve out a very specific niche of what we do well, and stay within that stream. And so really what we do well is equipment operations on the farm. So with that, we have a very small, simple plug-and-play device that is compatible across the swath from a brand new combine through to like a 50s tractor if you wanted to outfit that with our device. And you can get something as simple as applied coverage mapping and some machine health information so that you know you're running your machines and you're not going to have downtime in the field. And that's the core of where we try to stay so that we don't get too diluted.
So if I'm Farmer Joe and we're sitting at the kitchen table, what is it that you can show me that makes me go, oh, geez, that would be really good? Like, what do you find resonates the most with what you're doing for producers?
Yeah, I think especially if we're talking in the broadacre crop space, really the diagnostic codes that we're pulling off of those machines and giving insight into if that machine is looking like it might go down soon. So if you have a combine, you've got a very short and critical season to get your crop off. We can actually pull those check engine lights and decode them for the producer and give them a little bit more comfort as to what's running in their machines. If we were to talk,
really,
yeah. Sorry, I'll pause there for you.
Yeah. So if I'm in an 8R tractor and I get some sort of error code about the, I guess it's not tier 4 anymore. It's they're using. I got a brain fart, but yeah, you use. I can't remember. You got to use that fuel additive now to make the regulatory world for emissions.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You get a code because that's not
like
working.
your DEF filter's
you can
plugged or something.
Tell them remotely. Yeah, you probably had that before.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of my John Deere days when he has the tier 4 engine codes and you're making the transition to full emission regulations. But yeah, so you could take any code off any farm equipment and help them diagnose that remotely. Is that what you're saying?
For the most part, yeah. So, and again, that's coming from our automotive world. Anything that's following that public CAN protocol is what it's called. Essentially, the communications protocol behind the scenes of those machines. We're actually able to decode those and send those out to the growers. So we're able to set up, usually we'll sit down with a producer and say, okay, do you want text alerting, for example? And perfect example, we had one producer down in California where their harvester actually went and did an auto engine shutdown. And so our system automatically texted the vineyard manager and the winery so that they could have understanding that the harvester was down and it's going to be a little bit delayed bringing grapes back for them.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask, for example, you beat me to the punch. That's very cool. That can be so frustrating. And if you got a bunch of tech savvy young guys like yourself that can help out, I'm sure that would make your customer base very grateful. You had something on your website there about the shop and the crop and the cab. Why the focus on those three areas?
Yeah, the where those really came out of, Dan, was especially in the early days of IntelliCulture, where we were doing a lot of grower interviews and customer discovery. We found that there was typically sort of like those domains from a stakeholder on the farm. And even if it's the same person, they're generally wearing like different hats when they're operating that part of the operation. So shop view, for example, is typically run by the shop manager or the fellow who's looking after all the machines on the farm. And so that's really in the sort of honor of simplicity. We broke them out so that you don't have to get bogged down with this big farm management software if you really just want to understand your maintenance schedules. So that's shop view. Crop view, similar notion, but looking at more of the vineyard or the orchard manager, say. And that's the fellow who's out running your spray patterns, making sure that all your staff are getting your crop tended to, and that's carved out and isolating out just those pieces of information. And then finally, cab view, where that dialed in was essentially a lightweight spray mapping software that you can launch up in the cab. So in the same way that you're getting your screens in your nice new machines, you can now pull that up in a screen and literally as old a machine as you want to be running on the farm and get some lightweight spray mapping. Cool.
Where do you see your products or your services having the most impact for the producer, like financially, in terms of management, for the environment, which is a big thing coming down the pipe? Where are you having the biggest impact on your farmers' quality of life?
I would say financially as an abstraction from risk management. And so what I mean by that is essentially preventing mistakes on the farm or flagging mistakes on the farm that might have gone unnoticed in the past. So say you're doing a tandem spray in a block of apples. We're able to alert the grower of that, and they can schedule a respray event before any pest outbreak might happen. And that risk prevention really translates into financial savings at the end of the season.
Nice. So you're on their team when shit goes wrong, basically, to translate that down to...
That's the goal, yeah.
So I was going to ask you, too, we were talking about producers, but some of your target market is also ag retails and custom applicators. How would you guys provide products and services to help those demographics?
Yeah. So the ag retail route, it's really focusing on more of the budgeting and cost accounting side. So if you're running or looking after a number of different fields or farms, what we're able to do is actually completely automate your working and budgeting process for that. So not the budgeting rather, but the actual like feedback loop. So if you're running, say, a paper-based system where you're saying how many hours you spent out or how many acres you covered in XYZ field, we can actually pull that right off your plate altogether. And we're able to basically spit out an automated report that tells you how many hours and acres you covered for all of your clients. Typically how the folks in that space have been using the system is they'll actually go back at sort of their seasonal budgets, look at how they spent towards it, and they don't have to worry about all the paper chasing anymore because it's all passive.
So this is more or less technology facilitating a consultative process in a lot of instances.
Yeah, that's actually a really eloquent way of putting it.
Because I was just thinking when you're talking of a mechanic that I used to work with, and he would say the problem is the seat to the steering wheel linkage is the problem, meaning the human being in the seat of the machine is what's giving you the problem. A lot of what you do must be sort of linking up, HR with technology. So you've probably had to learn a lot of skills in the HR realm as well as just widgets, hey?
A little bit. I mean, I think our stance generally though is that we absolutely would never know better than yourself how to run your farm. So we don't get a whole lot into that, and every farm's run differently. But in that like steering wheel to operator linkage, that's where we try to clean up a little bit of the data. And get a bit more of a direct link to the machine itself, so that there's no more ambiguity or uncertainty, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that. So as a percentage, what amount of like prairie producers do you think are really implementing technology in a meaningful way?
Oh, that's a very challenging question.
Right? Sure. Well, that's why we do the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's a challenging question.
I think that I think I'll answer with a bit of a political answer, in that it depends on how you class.
I want to nail you down to like 28.2%.
No, I think, especially in prairie and broadacre, it seems like tech is a lot more ubiquitous when it comes to like auto-steer systems and some of those foundational, really key value driving operations, which is awesome to see, and I love it. Right? I mean, we come from that industry in the automotive sector, and seeing that used so well in ag is really exciting to us. I think where there's maybe some disparity is bringing sort of that next level of technical sophistication on the farm, and I think that like whether we like it or not, as much time as I want to spend in a tractor seat, just the global competition is rising so fast, and there's so much pressure out there that next level of tech needs to come, whether our producers like it or not. And so that's, I think, where there's a bit more of a lack. So if we were to go back to like percents, I'm literally pulling numbers out of the sky here, but probably like it feels like 85% have got that foundational tech on the farm that's working really well.
Yeah.
And when it comes to
I'd agree with that.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. You're the expert.
Yeah,
here.
no,
Come on,
that,
man.
that's
Put me on the
for
spot.
that, because you're kind of talking about like auto steer and GPS
Yeah.
and some of the basics.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of data collection.
Yeah.
Most producers are doing that.
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to that like next level sophistication, I think maybe like it's 15% or so, just sort of pulling from some of the growers that I've interacted with that have like really sophisticated items that they're running. I don't know if that sort of is in line with what you've been hearing.
I love it. Back to my beloved 80-20 rule. So I appreciate that, because I would say that. I'd say 80% of the farmers are using pretty basic digital technology, and there's 20% that are doing 80% of the next level shit that's really, defining how they manage. So here's an interesting thought. How would you juxtapose a producer who's on that, who's the 20% doing the 80% of next level digital interaction and management on their farm versus the 80% that are just doing the basics? How big is the disparity? How do you see them potentially getting left behind? Because that 80-20 rule is just, it's never, I'll use your word, ubiquitous.
Yeah.
It ain't going away. That's nature. But is there a big disparity now, or is it going to get bigger? Guys should be worried if over the fence they look at the tractor and there's nobody in the cab and they're like, oh shit, I'm $50 an acre behind my neighbor.
Yeah, I think that it is a concern, and that's frankly it's one that's why we're in the space that we're in, because a concern that we have. I I think it's no secret that there's just large investment firms sweeping through the nation, basically buying up farms that they then operate under this investment wing, and in that 20% is essentially prepared for that shift if it needs to happen, right? Like, because those investment firms are going to be coming in with more standardization and stipulation on how the farms should be running, because it's the only way to run a very scalable operation. And so I think that there is a large disparity, and I'm certainly concerned about it. But I think that it's also one that's like, it's easily overcome by just sticking to like your guns on your farm, and opening up the mind a little bit to some of those like stepping stones towards that tech stack. Because I think, and sorry, I'm going to go on a bit of a ramble here, but like some of our growers that we work with, we have a number of growers that are like family run, and we also have a number that are more corporate run, and have like a big multinational, multi-billion-dollar organization that oversees them. Frankly, the operation on that farm isn't tremendously different. They're still running their farm in both scenarios. The big delta that I see, though, is those larger corporate run operations have that standardization in place, and with that usually comes a little bit more tech enforcement on the farm.
I would agree. You know, I think the advent of standard operating procedures on a farm is sort of a marker in time where you've, you know, obviously if you're scaled to the point where you need people to look at a standard operating procedure, that's vastly different than our traditional view of the lone warrior on the farm doing everything himself. Right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how we in the West can get perspective from someone like yourself in technology, right? Because A, you come from an industry that's different than ag, so you can bring that perspective. But B, you've also lived and worked, correct me if I'm wrong, in Ontario, at the heart of the Silicon Valley there in agriculture. You've been in California at the heart of the automotive technology. I don't know how much agriculture you did in California, but now you're out in Alberta.
Yeah.
We won't get into your political positioning here, because that's a hot potato these days. Where do you stand on Donald Trump and COVID and vaccines? No, just kidding. This show is not about that. But what can we learn that we don't know, that if we went there and saw, you know, that, God bless them, the Ontarians and the Californians working away, like, we'd be like, oh man, why aren't we doing this? Do you think there's anything, or are we just doing it better? Just be honest.
No, I think that like everyone's got their own lens of excellence, I guess, if you will. I think like looking at California ag, the thing that really is stand out to me is just how they've operationalized the farm, in that there's like a tremendous amount of seasonal labor and staff that comes in each and every year, and everyone just knows their seat so well and loves performing in that seat. And honestly, I've only been in Alberta for a little bit, so I haven't got as much flavor for the West as I would like. Ontario, I think, is similar in that we have a lot of like horticulture and high value crop, but they're like cherries and apples are quite large in the area that we kind of started in. And with that, again, the operation is just astounding in terms of, it's like a well-oiled machine on that farm. Seeing the day start and the shift start in the morning, because there might be 15 or 20 staff going out picking apples that day, which is crazy to see and keep track of. So I think that those items are and sorry, I didn't really answer your question of like how the West can gain perspective. I think perspective, that's why I've liked touring around to different areas, is I think that just seeing it and experiencing it is probably the most powerful way. But honestly, like, I learned a ton through Ag Twitter too, and just seeing how everyone's running, the challenges and the stuff that folks are talking about in the field, and just being receptive to it, and having a very like humble approach of like being excited to learn how other folks are running, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question. If not, maybe try and pose it in a different way. I think
I appreciate that, and I think the value of someone like yourselves and your team is you have a completely different perspective. The cake is not baked.
Yeah.
You can envision different ways of going about things, where if you're doing something for the last 20 years a certain way, it's very hard to jump out of that paradigm onto a new life track. How are you guys, so you have some solutions for producers, and you're a nice guy and you're pretty smart and all that good stuff, but how are you guys getting your product to market?
Yeah,
for your solutions to market?
really good question. We started out going direct to farm. So we worked with a couple of more like high profile and like almost like influencer growers who are on the forefront of technology, and we leaned into them as much as possible to develop our solution. Frankly, in terms of going to market now, we really work through a lot of like channel partners and dealer networks. So whether that's other technology providers or precision ag dealers, essentially trying to stay true to like where the industry goes for these kinds of solutions, because frankly those are the folks that they know and trust, right?
Right.
And so that's really.
Can you give us a good example or a shout out of the 20% are doing 80% of the business for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So like overall, just about 2x of our business is done through those channel partners right now. So companies like GeoForce, for example, down in California. Well, actually, they're across the states, but they're one of our major resellers in California, where they provide GPS and technologies to ag and other transportation industries, and we do a ton of business through them, for example. And of course, there's also like the other more just like local dealers, for example, that we've been working to build out relationships with as well. Your more traditional like red and green iron.
Cool. And what is the next big thing for you guys? Where are you heading? Are you going to be doing? You're going to be helping with farming on Mars with your old buddy Elon, or what's the story?
I doubt we'll be getting to Mars anytime
outer
soon.
space. Well, you just got him on the Rolodex. Hey, I remember back in 2015, we were hanging there. You saw me one time in the cafeteria.
Yeah, grabbing my extra coffee for the day at 7 p.m.
Right. And he gave you like the nod.
The nod of approval for
going.
extra caffeination.
We're just starting your next shift. Yeah.
No, it's I don't think we'll be going to Mars anytime soon. But in terms of what's next, I think the focus is one of the guiding factors for us is that automation track, and not necessarily like autonomous tractors, but just automation and data collection and alerting as well. One of the big stances that we have is like any manual input that's required into a technology system is requiring more input and causing friction on the farm as opposed to actually solving a problem. So that I guess ramble is getting into more like task detection on the farm is where we're going to be spending a lot of time. So automatically understanding what job those machines are doing so that we can get even further dialed into clarity from a budgeting perspective and also risk prevention. So if we know that you're out spraying fertilizer automatically and that you missed a spot on your field, we can send you a quick notice and say, hey, you should go do a respray in real time. And that's going to be sort of the major phase for us going forward for now. Beyond that, as that automation does come to the farm and your tractors start driving themselves, on the notion of that task management and job completion on the farm, in the same way that you might be calling up an operator to go out and perform a task, you're going to have to call up a robot to go out and perform that task. And you're also going to want to know if that job gets done by said robot. And that's really where we're hoping to grow into at IntelliCulture is help bridge that machine to grower translation, if you will.
You told me this is January in 2022, and this is going to last forever on the internet. You told me that 85% of producers are using basic baseline digital technology like auto steer and maybe a little bit of yield mapping and stuff like that. Cole Powers.
Oh, here we go.
What year, right? What year would you be able to say 85% of tractors or farmers are using automated technology? What year?
85% are using automated tractors and technology.
When we hit the same level of saturation we got with like auto track and auto steer and a little bit of yield mapping.
I'm gonna put it out there as 2038.
2038.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's oh my God, that's like 15 years.
Yeah. You
think it'll take that long, eh?
I do. I think so. At least to reach that that level of saturation. 85% is a large percentage of
that's
the
everybody.
Demographic, right?
Everybody that counts.
Yeah, and like the other.
Well, and maybe it'll be optimistic to say it will happen by then. Just because there's a lot of momentum. People want to buy nice John Deeres and sit in them.
Yeah,
that's the reality.
Yeah,
and generally manufacturers make what people want to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I don't think that the technology will necessarily be the limiter. I think that it'll just be the market and the organizational structure of the industry too, right? Like, you've got a ton of family-run operations still, and who knows what the cost point of those autonomous tractors are going to come in at. Like maybe there's a shift towards like robots as a service, for example, and that's going to take a long time to develop to reach that saturation.
Well, let's segue because we got 21 minutes here before you have to get off the line and you have to go raise some more money. So speaking of which, what is it like to be like a young dude, smart and handsome as you are, coming from automotive to agriculture with no money and no customers and just a dream?
Well, I used to have hair, so that's one thing.
Well, and I shouldn't have assumed you don't have money because maybe you have money from like a rich significant other or parents or something. I don't know. But
No.
I assume you were broke as an entrepreneur.
No, that's a safe assumption. We came out and it's been a very meandering course to run IntelliCulture full time. And I remember a couple of times laying in bed the night before, looking at the bank account, thinking, "Oh, I don't know where rent's coming from." But it's those moments that harden you too, and they make it all worth it at the end of the day, in my opinion. So it's not to say that it's an easy ride, but we came right out of college and we had enough of the automotive world. We wanted to do IntelliCulture. We wanted to do our own company. And we ran it full time just on what little savings we had at the end of your college career, aka debt, for a few months. We ran out of money. We went and got jobs. I call them real jobs, but we went back into industry. I worked in the solar world for a while doing development. A couple other guys went back to GM, for example, and we worked IntelliCulture in nights and lunch hours. I remember running out to my truck in the parking lot of the office to take calls for IntelliCulture from 12:30 to 1 o'clock. And we did that for a number of months, built up enough savings again, and quit our jobs and came full-time IntelliCulture, ran those savings down again, and then that's when we ended up getting some traction finally. We started making sales, and the business started actually growing, and then we ended up bringing in some capital. And beyond the capital, the mentorship and the advisors that we've brought in have really helped us get us to a bit more of a sustaining company as opposed to just always burning savings in the back of your pickup truck.
Well, shout out to Joe Dales, who's been a great influence and mentor to us both and actually made
Absolutely.
the connection. I'm thankful that you're really persistent in following up with me because, obviously Joe taught you that and various other things. But what would you're mentoring young folks that are trying to start businesses, much like maybe Joe has mentored you.
Absolutely.
What do you try and impart? How do you try and help people with, specifically you were talking about burnout and there were some other topics. What topics are you helping people with, and what do you have to say about those starting a business?
Yeah, I think that the foundational topic that I'm incredibly passionate about is following your passion. Frankly, I think that when I went off to college, I had this like track in my mind of what a normal and good career was, and it wasn't until I kind of got tired of the automotive space and started IntelliCulture that I truly understood what it meant to run after something that you're on fire for. And so that's a message that I try to convey to the students that I work with still at the university there, which is like, heck, if you're passionate about something, run at it. You're young, you've got your whole life ahead of you to make mistakes and it to flop. Like the worst thing that'll happen is you're gonna fail at your company and you're gonna come out of it growing as an individual and knowing what you like even better. So I don't know. I'm really big on the soft skill stuff like that. I think as I've been getting more and more hardened and losing more and more hair, I've been getting a little bit more into some of the harder topics of entrepreneurship too, and just talking about like what it's like to raise capital, what it's like to actually have customers that you are serving, and you're literally providing information that is driving their business decisions, and the risk that comes with that. So getting into some more of those like vulnerable conversations with the students that I've worked with has been really important too. So I always try to take the stance of I just tell them about my experience though, because like I don't know what the heck I'm doing. None of us do. We're all just figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. Why did you guys call it IntelliCulture?
That's a great question. We had a pitch competition that we got into very early on, and they said that we needed a company name, and so we went to the drawing board and thought, okay, intelligent agriculture, IntelliCulture, here we go, and we submitted that, and we haven't looked back.
Okay. I thought maybe it had to do with some specific culture or something like that, or Elon Musk culture of doing business or something. You're going to train everybody in agriculture how to do business like Elon
No,
Musk
absolutely. We literally just took two words and slapped them together for a pitch competition.
Oh, it's good. No, it's good. So wrapping this up, if anybody's listening to this, that would be a potential customer. I mean, obviously, anybody who's in agriculture that's looking for ways to do things digitally, and they liked what you were laying down, what would you say to them right now if they're listening?
That's a good question. I would say just sit down and think about the challenges that you actually face on the farm, and like the better that you can convey those to folks like us, hopefully we'll be able to solve them better for you. And I'm hoping that like continuing to talk about those real challenges on the farm is what's going to spur actual impactful innovation in the industry, as opposed to just tech push, I guess.
Awesome. No, that's great. And I hope that there's some folks listening that help you hit your EBITDA number by you solving their problems.
Absolutely.
Because you got money to raise.
That we do.
You're doing a little pitch here for money, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. Like you said, I share your sentiments that anybody that Joe Dales connects with me, I would consider obviously someone high quality and worthwhile to spend some time with. And I appreciate you being so insistent on connecting. And but yeah, most of all, I love that we have the opportunity to share somebody like your story, because it's hard to convey in a 35-minute podcast, a startup journey like yours, what you guys have gone through, how you've grown, all the twists and the turns and the ups and the downs, and you following your passion to help people do their extremely hard job in agriculture. Pretty impressive stuff, Cole. And yeah, like Joe Dale said, pretty proud of you guys and what you're doing, and proud to have you on the show. So thanks so much for your time and coming on and telling your story.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure, and absolutely same sentiment on our front. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
So how do people get a hold of you, Cole?
Yeah, they can find us online at www.intelliculture.ca or .com, and or you can just email Cole@intelliculture.com, and you'll have a direct line to me there.
Love it. Well, all the best, and I'm going to have you on the show in 2038, I guess.
Perfect.
Put it in your calendar.
Yeah, no, that'll be in bright red lights on the calendar for us all.
Hey Siri, in 38 years, of course, my phone, everything, I got devices all over. Hey Siri, in 38 years, remind me to re-interview Cole Powers on the Growing the Future podcast, please, and thank you.
Perfect.
Might be live from Mars, but no, that's all good, man. Oh yeah, she's okay. It's in there.
Perfect.
Keep it real, Cole. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dan. Take it easy.